So you can see two of the big causes. You can see the Panic of 1819. Somebody raise your flames, you can tell me why the Panic of 1819 is going to affect people's desire to become more politically active. Well, it's not about debt, but it is about recession or depression, right? Does the economy care if you voted or not in terms of affecting you?
No.
No. So people who are negatively affected by the Panic of 1819, most of them did not get a chance to actually vote for politicians who made some of the policies that affected the Depression, right, or the Panic. So now they want to do that. What about the Missouri Compromise? How will the Missouri Compromise compel people to want to become more active? This wasn't rhetorical. I'm actually expecting an answer. Yes.
They wanted to try to balance it again.
Okay, balance what?
The state's vote.
Okay, well, what Missouri Compromise was all about balancing what? States, in reference to what? Slavery, right? Having an equal number of slave and free states. But remember we also talked about the Talmadge Amendment, where the North was trying to get slavery gradually emancipated out of Missouri, right? And this was scaring Southern slave owners. So Southern slave owners wanted to become more active to protect the rights of slaveholders, right? Where Northerners want to get more active in. Yeah, well, stopping the extension of slavery anyway, right? And so now people want to get more involved in politics because the issues are getting bigger and the opportunity to vote is getting larger. So, and we talked about a new political age begins to dawn. For like about one cycle or two cycles, we had pretty much just one national, what's called the National Republican Party. But then by the time Jackson comes around, there begins to split, right? And we get the National Republicans on one side, is our new political age. The National Republicans on one side, and who's going to be on the other side? Jackson's going to be being a what party? A Democrat, right? So this new political age, we're starting to see a two-party system. You saw the PowerPoint thing yesterday. What's happening to voter turnout at this time? Widely increasing, right? Also, we talked about like people doing stump speeches and going around and talking to the people, right? That's getting more people involved. Has it ever been to a political rally before? Okay. It's going out there trying to get people to get involved in politics, right? Whether you're conservative, liberal, Republican, or Democrat, it is important to get involved in politics, right? And this is who you are. I will say that next year, first trimester, I always have a political activism class, and you can choose to work on a campaign and get involved. I don't care if you want to be a Republican or work for a Republican or a Democrat or what campaign. Lots of kids have done it in the past. And you literally are, it's called political activism, and you work for a campaign. When Obama ran in 08, I had several kids who worked, and they literally went and campaigned in Ohio, made phone calls. I actually saw him speak in Cincinnati. And I've had people work for congressional candidates, Senate candidates, and all different kinds of stuff. Whichever one, if you want to do it, whichever one you want to do, that's great. We can't do it. Why can't I do it this year?
Because there's no election.
There ain't no election, right? Can't have political activism with no election. Yes.
Democrat versus who in the new political age?
It's called National Republicans. The National Republicans would then become Whigs, and what would the Whigs end up becoming?
Oh.
Republicans.
Was it always just Democrats?
Yeah, Democrat. Really, the Democrats came from like the Jeffersonians. In fact, Democrats celebrate Jefferson-Jackson Day as their sort of founding party, and the Republicans celebrate Lincoln Day because he was the first elected Republican.
What's Locust Focus?
Don't worry about Locust Focus. It was a worker group in New York. I'm not worried about that. Let's talk, though, about the election of 1824, because this is going to be a really important election for a couple different reasons. First of all, because it was wholesale corrupt, which I love to talk about. Nothing better than corruption. All right? Well, I guess there are lots of things better than corruption. There's nothing more fun to talk about than corruption. All right, in 1824, there were essentially four candidates. Well, there were four candidates. All right? The main two candidates were Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams. These are the main two candidates. Now, Kentucky had a boy run. Who does Kentucky have run? Henry Clay's going to run.
Then some nobody.
Actually, a guy named William Crawford. William Crawford actually got more votes than Henry Clay did. Now, Henry Clay was also Speaker of the House. All right? Now, what ended up happening was Jackson got the most electoral votes and the most popular votes, but he didn't get a majority. And I'll give you an example of how that works. Today, how many electoral votes are possible? Remember?
438.
538, right? Settle down. All right. So let's say that Kevin versus Austin versus Reagan versus Laswell.
I got this one in the bag.
Yeah, you're running against the big middle, Darst. Yesterday during volleyball practice, she was playing up front, and she's like, "Why am I not a middle? I'm huge." You and Allie do swing for the fences. I like it. No pushing when it comes to you guys. It's all swinging. All right. Now let's say Kevin gets 100. Let's say Austin gets 90. Let's say Reagan gets 210, and let's say Hallie gets 138. Okay, this is I hope 538. 200, 210. Let's say. All right. Who wins? Who wins? How do you have to win? How do you have to get to win?
You have to have a majority.
Today you had to have 270, right?
Nobody wins.
Nobody won. Like obviously back in 1824. There weren't 538 votes, but I'm just doing it like it is now. To be fair, I have no idea how many votes there were, so I'm using that. Jackson had the most popular and electoral votes, but nobody had a majority. So the final three went to the House of Representatives. If there's no majority, the House of Representatives decides. Okay? Henry Clay was the Speaker of the House. He also, as it turns out, hated Andrew Jackson. Guess who ends up becoming president?
John Quincy.
John Quincy Adams does. Now I want to ask you a question. What do Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, and John Quincy Adams all have in common? What job did they have before they ended up becoming president? Secretary of State. Now Jefferson was Secretary of State, then Vice President. But they are all Secretary of State. You'll never guess who became Secretary of State when John Quincy Adams became president.
Andrew Jackson.
Henry Clay did, the guy that helped him get elected. This is known as the corrupt bargain. Jackson's people said, even though Jackson had more popular and more electoral votes, the House was swayed by Henry Clay, and then all of a sudden Adams wins and Clay becomes the Secretary of State. This was called a corrupt bargain because he was accused of corruption, saying, making a deal that he would get the win if he could get Secretary of State.
Why did Clay never win president?
That's a great question, and the answer is, I don't know, like, he was not all that personable, but it was before a lot of campaign. He did not campaign like other people did. Also, I would argue he was usually the most qualified, but he wasn't the most well-loved. He also represented a place that had that level. I talk so fast.
You really do.
When I watch these videos, I'm like, how do you learn anything in this class? He represented an area of the country that just didn't have that many votes, right? I mean, he didn't represent the North with a lot of population. He didn't represent the South that voted as a bloc. So from that perspective, he was always kind of cutting the two in half, and he could never actually put them together. Is this a more reasonable way for me to talk in terms of my pace?
No, I like when you talk that.
All right, Penguin.
Brenda's
Didn't Crawford have like a paralytic attack as well, so that's why he didn't win? Well, I mean, just
Some
that's why
people
Clay
got
didn't
sick.
give him his vote.
Maybe,
That's what it said in Bailey.
no, that he got sick isn't. What I'm saying is, I don't know that the evidence is there to say that only his disease was the only reason he voted for Adams. He clearly didn't like Jackson. I can't speak to what Clay was actually thinking.
Because Bailey said something like kind of inferred that Crawford probably would have gotten Henry Clay's vote if he had the paralytic.
That's possible, although I don't know that we can say that for definitive. So, like when it comes to class, I try not to make that like definitive statement because I think it's too hard to say whether one way or the other. But that's a possibility. Yeah.
It was a popular thing on the IQ Zoom.
Yeah, you see you want to put a little star by it.
This
Everyone reads
election?
this down. Yeah, the corrupt bargain is oftentimes on the AP exam, yeah.
So did Henry Clay assume that after Adams served a term or two that he would be elected?
I think that he was hoping this would give him more national exposure, yeah. Now, I will say, now that I've started to do the notes a little bit differently, the big idea stuff are kind of all going to have a chance to be on there. But yes, this one's a big one. Okie dokie. Now, you can see on there, we don't have a lot about John Quincy Adams, right? There are some presidents we'll spend days on. You know, Lincoln, FDR, stuff like that. We spend a lot of time on Jackson. Actually, Jackson's a good example, right? Not just about him, about the era of which he was president. John Quincy Adams, not so much. John Quincy Adams goes down as one of our greatest Secretaries of State. And one of our most useless presidents. He was very, very smart, but he was not particularly well loved. He was very principled, but not very flexible. I will say that he is the only president in our country's history who, after he became, this won't be on the test, but he is our only president in our country's history who, after becoming president and serving his term, he went back to Congress. He actually served in Congress after this for a while. He liked public service a lot.
Can you do that?
Yeah. Yeah. We've had one president become president and then later became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Who?
Taft. Now, most presidents, it's the last real job they'll ever have. Like they'll start societies or like Clinton has a foundation and stuff like that. But, you know, like for people like Clinton and Obama and even George Bush, who were all relatively young when they got elected, these are people who've done a lot with their life, and just sort of stopping is kind of a hard thing to do. And these are very ambitious people, and so Bush is much more of he's much more of a relaxed person than Clinton. Clinton can't sit still. Bush is much more of a hang out with your family type of guy. And so he has been less out there, but he's still done some stuff. Clinton's been wildly active. Yeah.
Once you get elected to president, you get paid that amount for the rest of your life?
You get a presidential pension your whole life. I don't know if it's the exact same. I don't know that it's full salary, but you do get a presidential pension. And the reason they actually started that was because Harry Truman, this didn't start until the 50s, because Harry Truman never had any money. In fact, he lived with his wife's mother for the majority of his time before he was president, and he didn't really have anything. He was a public servant almost his whole life. And so they gave him a pension because it was embarrassing for a president to be poor, essentially. Presidents are the rest of their life given like security detail. Like he'll have Secret Service. Obviously not that much, but he'll have some detail. Can you see what the time is?
So, like, how
13.
much is their pension?
Stop.